So, hi everyone. I'm Anna from GreenGeeks, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar on Picturing Success, Maximizing Image Engagement in WordPress with our guest speaker, Corey Maass, web developer of OMG IMG. So welcome, Corey. We're very happy to have you here.
Thank
And
you.
I'm gonna say a couple of words about GreenGeeks for those of you who are watching and may not be familiar with us. We're a 300% green energy web hosting provider, which essentially means we put back 3 times the energy we consume into the grid in the form of renewable energy. We have been recognized by the US EPA since 2009 as a Green Power Partner. We offer share hosting, reseller hosting, VPS, and dedicated server. So now, moving on to our webinar, a few housekeeping items for everybody to know. If you have any question that you come up with during the presentation, please go ahead and put in the Q&A, and Corey will be answering them at the end of the presentation. Also, I'm so sorry. You're also welcome to chat in the chat room, but remember to select everyone so that everybody can see what you guys are discussing. And as always, we're recording this presentation, so if you have to step out or you want to watch it later, no worries, because we'll be sending everybody a YouTube link in an email in a couple of days. And finally, we have enabled live transcription, so you can enable them during the webinar by clicking on the show captions icon. So now that all of that is out of the way, I'm going to say a few words about, first I'm going to introduce actually Erica from our team from GreenGeeks, Erica Barbosa, who will be assisting us in the chat and the Q&A. So Erica, you want to say hi, introduce yourself?
Thank you, Anna. Hello, everyone. I am Erica Barbosa from Costa Rica, and today I'm going to be assisting the chat. Hope enjoy today the webinar. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Erica. So now I'm going to say a few words about Corey. Corey Maass, he has been building for the web since 1996 with a focus on WordPress since 2011. He started his first SaaS app in 2004 and has launched dozens ever since. For over 10 years, he's combined his love for entrepreneurship and WordPress by building, launching, and selling numerous WordPress plugins and SaaS apps built on WordPress. Currently, he's focused on OMG IMG WordPress plugin. Hey, welcome, Corey. You want to say hi, want to introduce yourself, and then start sharing your screen and the presentation?
Sure. I'm Corey. I'm hoping you can hear me okay. I just moved all my mics around and then changed how I'm recording this. So, yes, you can hear me okay?
Yeah,
sounds good.
We can hear you.
Great.
Thank you.
Excellent. So yeah, why don't I go ahead and start sharing? Let's see if this works. I'm going to do this for the first time ever with me in the little corner there, so you can sort of see me while I'm talking. And is it backwards? Is the writing backwards? No. Yes, is that?
We can. Are you sharing your screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just on camera. Can you put me on camera? Or no, I guess that won't work, will it? Okay, that's what I get for trying to be clever. I will give up on that part.
It's
And
okay.
the where's the window? Document screens, Google Chrome, share.
Yes.
There we go. Okay.
Thank you.
And let's see. Oops, where did Chrome, or where did I go? Come on. This is why you should never try to do something new 10 minutes before doing a webinar. There we go. So I'm back on camera in my little thumbnail there, and hopefully you're all seeing the screen, which is words that are reading from left to right in English. As they were appearing to me, they were backwards. Anyway, so we'll get started here.
Yeah.
Oops, We got to start with the first slide. So talk entitled Picturing Success, Maximizing Image Engagement in WordPress. Today we're going to talk about how to use images both online in general and specifically in WordPress, and how images are used, and how to get the most out of them. So thank you for introducing me, Anna. Erica, thank you for having me. I'm a little jealous of your WordPress swag there. I've got a little a banner, but it's not nearly as well, and I'm standing in front of it, so it's not nearly as cool. But
Thank you.
anyway, well done there. So yeah, hi, I'm Corey Maass. I live currently in New Hampshire in the Northeast of the United States. As Anna mentioned, I've been building websites since the 90s, the dark ages, and specifically working with WordPress for about 13 years, since 2011. Also arguably the dark ages of WordPress, but we've come a long way. Way back in the 90s, like most people who were building websites, I also was a designer back then, right? It was an all-encompassing one job. You would design and build websites. So I've actually got a little bit of a background, very informal in design. I love design. A bunch of the books that you see behind me there are design books, and images and photography. So it's long been a passion of mine. And then last year, I started a new WordPress plugin called OMG IMG. And I promise I'll only mention it a few times during this talk. It's not all about OMG. And because I've been working on this plugin for a year, which, as you can tell from the name, is focused on images, I've learned quite a bit more about images online and in WordPress than I'd known previously, thus leading to this talk. So here we are today. So what makes a good image? Let's start at the 10,000 foot level, right? There are a couple of types of images when we talk about imagery online. Specifically, we're thinking of photos, which usually we attribute with being taken with a camera, something you'd see in the real world, which all has become a little vague now that AI is so prevalent, but hopefully you know what I'm talking about. And then graphics are kind of the opposite of photos. So illustrations, clip art, graphic design, and this might even include something like infographics. But basically, usually an image that we'd consider computer generated. Again, the lines are now blurred more than they used to be, but and what goes into a good image? Well, there's actually a lot of psychology built into it. I won't go into much of it, but it's worth noting because a lot of us just absorb imagery without thinking too much about it, but there's a lot that goes into it and the way that images can affect us. So things like colors and shapes, even at a real vague high level, can influence emotions and behavior. A couple of examples, things to think about are something like red denotes anger, right? At least in Western cultures. And squares denote stability, whereas circles often denote, nature and things like that. So all of these things are worth considering when looking at imagery. The other thing, since we are human, many of us know this, and we might even know this without realizing it, but we often look for faces. So for example, there's a great website called Kissmetrics for measuring analytics online. They once quoted a study that said if you included faces in images, you could see upwards of a 95% conversion. So it also is worth noting, what goes into an image, that which makes a good image. But overall, as a rule of thumb, trust your eye. You probably have a better instinct for what makes good images than you realize. And then when in doubt, copy other people. So rules for good images, rules, air quotes here, right? Looking at the photography industry, there are a number of rules of thumb that one can follow that will often help make sure that images are good. A few of them here. Rule of thirds. If you divide a frame, like whatever it is you're taking a picture of, if you divide it into a grid of 9 equal rectangles and place the primary elements along those lines, generally it's going appear to people as a good, well-balanced image. And speaking of image, symmetry, look for balance between elements in your photos, either through perfect symmetry, like my adorable dog here on the right. His name is Oso, by the way. Or big object, small object, light object, dark object, things like that. These are neat tricks to use for finding good images. You can also use what are called leading lines. So in the example here I took in the middle is using natural lines to lead the viewer's eye towards the subject or a certain part of the frame. And this pairs well with rule number 4, which is depth. To add depth, including objects in the foreground, middle ground, and background. But these are all tricks basically to draw people's eye into an image, right? They're looking for things in the foreground and background. And if you've got lines that lead somebody's eye to a specific object, it draws people in. And then a rule of thumb, here's what's the abbreviation? LPT, Life Pro Tip. Always watch your background. If you're using a photograph that you took or somebody you know took, pay attention to the background to ensure that it's not detracting from your subject, or, as has happened to a friend of mine, that there isn't a baby with no pants on running around in the background. It can happen. You want to be careful. All right, so what makes a good image specifically for your website? So getting a little more specific here. Most of us are pretty well trained now to think about if we're putting images onto our website, we want to say something, right? We want to convey a message. Then we want an image that evokes a certain emotion or stimulates an action, right? So like most of us have websites because we want people to read more of a story or click on something on the page. So make sure that your image does that. Make sure that it helps move the proverbial story along. Specifically for a website, the other thing to keep in mind is images should stand on their own and be evergreen. So I often encourage people to hesitate when using like a meme or a GIF or an emoji, because more than we realize, images often are still online 3, 5, 10 years later. It seems inconceivable, and we often don't think about that because we build a website or we write a blog post and then we move on. But you do want to make sure that if somebody stumbles across this 5 years later, that image still stands and still helps add value to the page overall. So again, rule of thumb, or excuse me, life pro tip, LPT, ask yourself, why are you adding this image and does it contribute to your overall goal? Now, with all that said, when in doubt, copy other people. So right now, a few trends that we are often seeing online is, I grabbed just a few here. These trends grow and change. These trends come and go. Right now, and they're also different industries have different trends and all that kind of stuff. So it helps to do your own image or own research. Also, go look at your competitors if you have them, or other people doing the same kind of thing you are. Around me right now, I happen to see a lot of round illustrations, like the example I've included here in the middle, bubbly people like that. The 90s are back. I don't know if anybody is happy or sad about this, but for better or worse, I'm seeing a lot of 90s graphics. So these old sort of, included an example here that kind of reminds me of Nickelodeon, some of those cartoons that I had growing up. And then I'm also seeing a lot of these sort of squiggly clip art lines that people are kind of throwing in for an overall effect. This is probably the number one slide that people like to attend my talk for. I'm sorry that it took me all of 9 minutes to get here, but hopefully this is what you get everything out of it that you'd been hoping for. Where to find images specifically for free online for your website. The number one tip that I can give you is take your own. We all carry around these amazing little cameras that also happen to let us take phone calls and send text messages and stuff like that. But they all include amazing cameras. So yeah, whenever you can, go take your own photo. If you're, whatever it is you're blogging about, if you can capture an image out in the real world, that's the best thing you could do. After that, there are paid sources online. Most of us are familiar with things like Shutterstock, websites like iStock, Adobe has their own. Getty Images is a real popular one. But a lot of those can be pretty expensive. Thankfully, in this day and age, we also have access to a fair number of websites where there are lots of great free images. Some of my favorites are Unsplash, Pexels, Pixabay, Stock Vault, and FreePic. And then I've actually been finding, I should have listed them here, I apologize, but if you Google for, I'm finding that there are now some niche specific stock photo websites. And then there's also, this is coming off the top of my head, which is why I apologize for not having it in my notes here. I've just recently came across a site that specifically focused on people of color and differently abled people and whatnot, to include a little more diversity, which I love that we're starting to see that. Bug me after the talk. I'll see if I can go find that. The other thing is ... AI, right? Now we live in a world where potentially you can have AI generate images for you. I'm still seeing results being, some of them are good, some of them are terrible. So, you know, your mileage may vary, but it's certainly a good option that we now have. The rule of thumb, or excuse me, the life pro tip that I'll mention here is don't forget about copyright and licensing, however. So anywhere that you grab a photo, you need to make sure that the copyright and the licensing for that photo matches how you're going to use it. So don't just go to Google and do an image search and then use whatever image you find. Especially now that we live in a world of lots of bots crawling all over the internet, they are actually looking at images that are copyrighted, and then we'll send you a message that says you owe us lots and lots of money because you used this image without our permission. So cover your butts. Make sure you check licenses, or like I say, if you take your own photo, that's not such an issue, as long as you take a photo of things you own the copyright to or whatever, but you get my point. All right. Getting even more specific, why every WordPress post page, product, blog post, podcast episode, whatever custom post type you happen to be using, needs an image. We've discussed what makes a good image. Now here's why you need to put an image with every single page you create. At a high level, we talk mainly about two things: one, SEO, and the other, user engagement. And we'll get a little bit more into those in particular as we go along. But we're talking about more views, better retention, more shares, and more sales. Okay, so more views. There's a website called HubSpot that has a great blog with lots of resources for online marketing and generally getting good attention online. They quoted a study that said content with relevant images gets 94% more views than content without relevant images. So include images, get a lot more views. Better retention. There's a very smart man named John Medina. On his website, he quoted a study that said if you hear a piece of information, 3 days later, you will remember 10% of that information. But if a picture is associated with that information when you hear it, you'll remember upwards of 65%. So way better retention of the information on the page if it's associated with an image. More shares. There's another great website called BuzzSumo that has a lot of good articles. They quote a study that says articles with an image once every 75 to 100 words receive double the social media shares than articles with fewer images. Now, personally, to me, that seems like a lot of images. And I don't necessarily think you need to go and count every 75 words, but don't hesitate to include lots of images in your content. Generally speaking, it's more likely to get shared, and in particular, those images are more likely to get shared if you include them. And then finally, if we're talking about something like e-commerce, we're talking about getting more sales. So another website, a great online tool called the Visual Website Optimizer, they quoted a case study that said that saw a 40% increase in conversion when a product page was redesigned to feature fewer, larger images. So don't just throw up crappy, fuzzy images. Nice, big, clear images of whatever it is you're selling. Which is why I've seen on even software sites, right, where they're selling a piece of downloaded software, the company will create a mock-up of like a box, like what you used to see when you walked into an office store that had, you know, their logo on it and stuff, as though you were buying a product, buying software off the shelf, because this has actually been proven to increase sales. So let's talk about how WordPress uses images. Most of us have heard of featured images. Featured images is what WordPress pushes you towards, like uploading one specific image associated with your blog post or your page or what have you. And then there are also in-content images. So if you're writing a long blog post, if you're using Gutenberg, the block editor, then you're using image blocks. If you're using the classic editor, you'd click that little media button as you were typing and load up your media library and import an image. So there's primarily there are these two types of images used in WordPress, and there are other exceptions, but primarily, and this is how WordPress is set up to use images, right? So featured images and in-content images, and most of the time they are used as hero images, right? We think of that big photo at the top. Most themes out of the box, the default themes out of the top box. You write a blog post, you add a featured image. When you go and you view it, there's that big image at the top. So we call that kind of the hero image, tops of blog posts. And then not more importantly, but also as equally important, but I also often see it overlooked, is on what WordPress calls archive pages. So most of us write a blog post and we go and we view that primary blog post, but elsewhere on WordPress, often linked to maybe from your footer or your top nav or whatever, are archive pages. Or another, often what is overlooked is your search page is technically an archive page, right? So a page that includes a list of all of your blog posts or all of your articles or all of your products. That's an archive page. Those usually include images. And I've seen a lot of people who, even if they choose not to show an image on the single blog view, forget that the image shows up on the archive page. So pay attention to that. There's your little life pro tip for this slide. But more and more now, speaking of SEO, search engine optimization, images are now also being used as open graph images, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute. This is not built into WordPress, but most of us are using an SEO plugin, Yoast, Rank Math, Squirrely, on and on and on. And these all include functionality for including an open graph image. So this is kind of the new third place that WordPress is including images. So make sure that even if you don't show a featured image on your site, again, if you choose not to show that big blog post image at the top of your blog post, make sure you add them. Make sure you add them because They might show up on your archive pages. Make sure that you use them because they might get used for an open graph image. Again, I promise I'll talk about that in a minute, or explain what that is in a minute if you're not familiar. And then also, I always encourage people to add images right from the beginning, because you never know when you're going to change your mind. And I've actually been in that scenario. As I said, I've been building websites for a long, long time. I've been in the unfortunate situation where after adding 300 articles, a client of mine said, you know what, let's go, I've changed my mind, let's go add images. And all of a sudden we were on the hook for figuring out how to backfill 300 images for 300 blog posts that we'd written over the last couple of years. So do yourself a favor, start adding images already. So what makes a good featured image / in content images? Again, make sure that they're relevant to the page that they're on, not just some image that gets used on every page, not just the logo of your company or what have you. Make sure that they are specific to the content that's there, whether it's a product or a blog post. Make sure it's relevant. Make sure it's high quality. You don't want it to be fuzzy. The other thing here is make sure that it looks good on all screens. And right now I'm looking at you at a screen that's this freaking big. So make sure that your images are this freaking big, or at least look good, depending on what your design is, when viewed very large. What makes a good featured image? Keep it simple. Again, something that moves the story along, the proverbial story of the content on your page. Make sure that it's unique. Here's the life pro tip from this slide is, if you're taking images, using an image from a stock photography website, remember, so is everybody else, right? And so there's a high likelihood that the image you use, that perfect picture of that perfect person sitting, typing on the laptop, that you're like, yes, that's exactly what I'm writing about. Other people are going to find that, that's the perfect image too, and then go and use it. So consider changing that image. Again, check the licensing, make sure you have permission, add filters, add colors, things that are going to make it unique to your website, and consistent with your branding and your site design. So if everywhere your website is black and white, maybe think about converting that photo to black and white, that kind of thing. And then when in doubt, whether you've got a good featured image or the image you're using is relevant, the technical term is called A/B testing, and there are tools out there that will let you show two pictures, and let your viewers choose and that kind of thing. But most people are like, boy, that sounds complicated, that sounds expensive. I'll tell you the cheat: ask your friends. Throw two pictures up on social, or message your buddy on text message and say, hey, I'm writing a blog post about my cute dog, which of these cute pictures of my cute dog is better, and let them tell you, and then trust them. So tech tips for featured images and in content images. This is where we get a little technical, but I promise not too deep. Make sure that it's in the right format. So images, most of us have probably come across .jpg, JPEGs, and .png, which nobody pronounces out loud, like JPEG. But anyway, JPEG generally, remember at the very start of this talk, I talked a bit about sort of photos versus graphics, right? General rule of thumb, JPEG is better for photos, like very complicated images, gradients and stuff like that, things you might see in the real world, versus PNGs do much better with blocks of color, so logos, graphics, things like that. Usually you want to do a PNG, right? Make sure you resize your image. You don't want to upload an image that is 20,000 pixels and is 20 megs when 2,000 pixels would do. So make sure that you resize it. Also, aspect ratio. Does your website use squares? Does your website use 16:9 rectangles? You want to make sure that you resize it to match. People often ask me, like, what is the right size for a featured image? Unfortunately, that depends on the theme you're using. But WordPress does have functionality built in to resize graphics. That doesn't do a great job, but technically it's there. But anyway, so there isn't one clear answer. Also, I beg and plead everybody before you upload images to compress them. So there's a lot of different ways to do this. Compressing them is taking out some of the data. It doesn't mean resizing this way, the way we think of width and height, but it will make the file size smaller. And there's websites that you can use. I love a website called compresspng.com, and from there it links to compressjpeg.com and compresseverythingelse.com, and they've also got a bunch of website, and it's all ad supported, which is really nice. Yes, I said ad supported is really nice, but that means you're not paying for it, right? It's free. You could ignore the ads. These are great tools. And it's not technically what's called lossless, meaning there is technically a little loss in quality, but I've never been able to see it. So I really like the way that they've got it dialed in. I'm on Mac. On Mac, there's local programs that you can have installed. Windows has them too. I just won't be able to name any of them. One of the ones that I really like for Mac is called Image Optum. And then there's also built into WordPress, or can be built into WordPress. There are also plugins that will handle this. Most of them then talk to a third party or service that you're probably going to have to pay for. But anyway, there's also easy ways to, if you just don't want to think about it, to configure WordPress essentially to do this for you. Once you upload an image, it'll be resized and compressed. But you'll have to go Google that or search for that in the WordPress plugin directory. Another tech tip: don't forget about mobile. So when you are previewing your images or previewing your content and you upload and place your pictures, your images, make sure you look at it on a screen that's this big, not just this big. So make sure that it looks really good on mobile. And then lastly, never, ever, ever forget about accessibility. So WordPress is pretty good about letting you not only upload a picture, but then add a title and add an alt tag, because you want to make sure that people who have visibility issues can also, take advantage of the content that you upload. The life pro tip for this slide is definitely a little techie, but there are these things called CDNs, Content Distribution Networks. You might want to go talk to a developer if you are not a developer, because they sometimes take a little configuring, though there are some services that are offered for WordPress that make it pretty easy to do this. But what this does is it, instead of the images being downloaded just from your server, they're downloaded from these fancy servers that are very, very fast, that are all over the world, so that images get to people quicker. So you might look into that. All right, as promised, what the heck is this Open Graph thing? Open Graph is a thing, protocol, to be techie about it, that was created by Facebook. If you look at my slide here, you'll see Open Graph tags are little pieces of information that describe a website. If you go and look at the source of most websites, most modern websites, you will see most of us are familiar with these meta tags, the old ones that have been there forever, like a title tag, a description tag, that kind of thing. There are these relatively new ones. I mean, they've been around for ages now, but anyway, that all start with OG:, and what that stands for is Open Graph. Excuse me. This was a set of rules defined by Facebook. Oh, excuse me, Meta. They changed their name. But what this does is allows services, we often think of socials, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, that kind of thing, to go and grab information from a website. And so that's what all this stuff is. If you look at the slide that I've got up, if you paste a URL into Twitter, you've probably seen that little preview that comes up, or if you paste a URL into Facebook when you're creating a post and you see that little preview that comes up, it's because Facebook is going to that URL and looking for this information and then bringing it back and displaying it for you. That's what Open Graph is. It's very, very powerful. At a high level, what's very, very important to understand is that this is how your website is perceived elsewhere on the internet, right? It's not just about people coming to your website, which ultimately is the goal most of the time. But more and more these days, our websites are shared on socials. Hey, either you sharing it, going, hey, go look at my website, or Anna talking to Erica, hey, go check out this really cool thing called OMG IMG, and she pastes in the URL, and a nice little preview pops up. So that's the power of Open Graph. The number one question I get asked about Open Graph is, does it affect SEO, right? Like, it's very, very important that you have a meta tag of description on your website for the sake of SEO. And we talk a lot about, optimizing content and whatnot. As of today, as far as I know, and everything that I've read, technically having these tags on your page does not affect SEO, meaning Google and Bing do not go to, when they're spidering your website, they do not look at this content. So technically it does not affect your SEO ranking. However, again, when somebody shares a website on social, if it's got a good preview, if it's got a good image, and somebody clicks on it, that type of traffic, that type of attention, Google and Bing are paying attention to, right? And if you're running Google Analytics, they're seeing people come to your website, and the more people that come to your website, the more authority your website has, and subsequently your SEO ranking technically goes up, right? So Open Graph, having Open Graph tags on your website technically does not SEO, but it does very much indirectly affect SEO. So don't neglect it. All right, again, drilling down, what are Open Graph images? Again, to be specific here, I've going back, you can see if you can squint and look at my slide, among these tags, there's one that is OG:image, and that points to an image. And so that is the image that I talked about a minute ago that you see when somebody shares a URL and you see a preview. That's the image that we're talking about. That's called an Open Graph image, and that's very, very important because, again, this is how you are perceived more and more online. People posting a URL, hey, read my new article on LinkedIn, even in Slack, right? Which is not technically a social network, but most of us are in something like Slack all day long and slinging URLs at each other. Here's a nice little preview, so you have some concept of what the page is about. And this is where images become very, very important because, again, that image is going to convey some information without relying on somebody reading a title and a meta description. We'll get a little bit more into that in a second. So what makes a good Open Graph image? In WordPress, most SEO plugins look for, well, two things. Most SEO plugins let you set a single Open Graph image somewhere in their settings. And so by default, every page, every post, every product uses that default image, which is great. At least there's something, but that image is usually not relevant to, again, the content of the page that's being shared. So if I'm sharing a blog post about my adorable dog, but it's on my website that's about trees, you're going to see an image about trees, not another picture of my adorable dog, which is just makes the world a bleaker, darker place because everybody needs more cute pictures of my dog. And then if you do have an SEO plugin installed, most SEO plugins by default will grab the first image that they see on the page if there is not an explicit Open Graph image set. And the danger of this, and I'll show an example in a minute, is, or no, I have an example here, right? The danger of this is what a lot of people do is they upload a featured image, and a lot of people don't know or understand that a featured image can be, and in fact should be, different than your open graph image. So like the example I've put in front of you here, if you upload a beautiful picture of mountains, that is your featured image on a blog post about the hike that you took yesterday, when it gets shared on socials, again, most SEO plugins are just going to grab the first image they find, starting with the featured image. If the featured image doesn't have anything on it, meaning text, a title, a description, a URL, all that's going to get shared is a big, pretty image, which is better than nothing. But again, it doesn't convey any information. And so often, as people are scrolling very, very fast, you're missing opportunities to grab people's attention, right? So here's two examples. One is, again, a nice image that makes sense in the context of a single blog post about the hike I took yesterday. But when shared here on LinkedIn on the left, if I'm scrolling by that, I don't get any information. I'm like, I either think that's a pretty picture or I don't. Versus using a plugin like OMG IMG, there's the second plug. You can embed text onto your image. You can modify your image to include more information. And there's other ways to do this. You can use Canva. Canva's great. You can use Photoshop. Photoshop's a pain in the butt, but it works. There's lots of ways to do this, but my plugin does it right in WordPress, so highly recommended. There, I've said enough. But please, however you want to go about it, I beg you, one, set explicitly an open graph image separate from your featured image, and two, include information on it that's going to grab people's attention. The big takeaway, it should be different from your featured image. Adding text gets you more engagement. Add title, add quotes, add a little picture of your avatar. Remember, I mentioned that 94% conversion if you included a picture of a human. Here's another opportunity to put a little picture of the author if you've got people blogging, that kind of thing. And then one crazy sci-fi modern extra advantage here is we also live in an age of text to speak, especially in the context of accessibility. So there are people who are scrolling socials and have software that will look at an image, but if it's got text on it, not only will it read the alt tag, but it will actually read the text on the image. So win, win, win. You've got more words on the page, you're going to get more eyeballs. And then Twitter. What about Twitter? So sadly, there's always going to be an outlier. So if you, again, squint at my screen here, I showed the full tags of my own website. Below the OG tags, you will also see a set of Twitter tags. So Twitter, not to be outdone by Facebook, said, well, in a pouty child voice, said, we want our own tags. And so they set a slightly different standard. The good news is if you don't include a separate set of Twitter tags, they will then go read the Open Graph tags. But two takeaways. One, if you want to optimize for Twitter, you can set explicit content for Twitter. And two, if you want different content, so like if you wanted an image that said, hey, Twitter, and you wanted an image that said, hey, LinkedIn, and you wanted those things to come up separately when shared on those networks, here's an opportunity. I've never heard of anybody actually doing it, but it's there if you want it. The other thing to note, and I'll be specific here in a second, is Twitter actually specifies a different size Open Graph image, which I'll talk about right now. Tech tips for Open Graph images. Again, one of the same rules applies. Make sure it is the correct format. JPEG for photos, PNG for graphics. Most of the social networks will actually not keep pulling the image from your website. They will actually go and download it to their own server and then serve it from there. And I've seen where they actually will convert it to the whatever format they prefer. And so it all gets a little tricky and messy, but general rule of thumb online, do it right for yourself, do it right where you can, and then let the chips fall where they may. So again, correct format, JPEG, PNG. Unlike I talked about with featured images, there is no correct size. It comes down to your theme and whatnot. With Open Graph images, there is a hard and fast correct size. It is 1200 by 630. You can go search for this, but very specifically, Facebook said, make sure Open Graph images are 1200 pixels wide by 630 pixels tall. And then again, tech tip, make sure you compress it. Technically, you don't need to. I mean, it's just a nice thing to do. You always kind of want to make sure that images are small. Do the right thing. Be a good internet citizen. Make images small. And then Twitter, again, to be different, they specify an image size of 800 by 418. This very weird other size. And so technically that is what will be look best on Twitter. But if you omit it, they'll pull in the Open Graph image and they'll show the whole thing. But this is where, again, a tech tip specifically for Twitter, this is where it's really, really important to create a separate Open Graph image and include a title on it. If I go back, an example here somewhere, no, Twitter, there it is. So this is actually a screenshot of sharing a page on Twitter. And if you really squint, I need a better example of this. But anyway, you'll notice that unlike my example of LinkedIn here, where below the image, there is the title of the page and there is the URL, Twitter took that away last year. So there is no title. There is a domain, like that little bit in the bottom left corner where it says omgimg.co, that Twitter is superimposing on the picture. The rest of it is just a picture. And so if I did not have let your image do the talking and then a description, none of that would show up. It would just be a picture of trees. So again, please make sure you create an image and ideally put some text on it. And then the last bit to mention, for tech tips, technically there is a accessibility option, meaning you can add an alt tag to Open Graph images, right? So you had OG:image and a URL was your tag. Technically, it does exist of OG:image:alt, and you can put an alt tag. As of all the research I've done up to today, no website is actually doing anything with that, unfortunately. Twitter does not pull it in. Facebook does not pull it in. LinkedIn does not pull it in. But again, I like to say, future-proof your website. Like I said at the beginning, make sure you're always uploading some sort of image. Do please make sure that you're also creating an alt tag for your image, because at some point, hopefully the social networks turn that on. And then again, all of these images end up with a proper alt tag, which again, benefits everybody. And success. We all win the internet. So to recap real quick, make sure that you upload images, make sure they are compelling, make sure you optimize them for the internet and for your own site, include branding, make sure they're stylistically consistent, all that kind of stuff. And then remember to upload separate images, one for Open Graph and one for WordPress. I'm Corey. This has been my talk. For those of you in the back who have also been waiting for this part, if I've convinced you by mentioning my plugin 9 million times and you want to go grab it, I've got a discount code for you. Take 20% off. Back to you, Anna.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I see a few questions in the Q&A. Maybe we can answer those. Actually, two questions from Matthew. Are there any sites that help with finding ownership copyright for an image? Sometimes this isn't obvious, and of course, people will often use others' property without proper attribution.
That is a great question. I have not seen that. I've not come across that question before. You'd think there would be. You'd think there'd be. I know Google can do a reverse image search, so you can upload an image and then they will go and try to find the source of that image. So that might take you back to, if you find a cool image randomly, it might take you back to, oh, this is on Shutterstock, or oh, this is on Pixabay, or whatever it is. But I've not seen one that specifically, if you upload an image, it'll say, oh, this was taken by Corey Maass on this date and has this kind of licensing. That'd be an interesting service, but I'll go look for that.
Yeah, that's a great question. David is asking, what about .webp? Is the web moving to this or not? And what about AVIF files?
I have this in my notes. I choose not to mention it, and then somebody does, or I choose to mention it, and then people go, what the heck is that? So there is a newer format created by Google. So in addition to JPEG and PNG, there is also WebP. WebP is usually created by a plugin or a third-party service, essentially converting a JPEG or converting a PNG to WebP. And it's supposed to be, of course, why invent something new if it's not better? It is supposed to be the end-all be-all format. It's supposed to replace JPEG or PNG on the web because it's supposed to be smaller file sizes with better image quality. If you're a Lord of the Rings nerd, then one image format to rule them all. I have found there's no harm in using it, but I have definitely seen instances where it is not, in fact, better optimized or a better file size. So I don't not recommend it. But what I have found is that it's much harder to deal or account for locally, like exporting from most photo software. They still either don't offer WebP or you have to go and select it separately. So what I've been finding is that generally, this is what I tell my clients, generally it's better to upload images in a format that you know is the right one, JPEG or PNG, and then use a service. I'm trying to think, ShortPixel is one that comes to mind, that will automatically convert images that you've uploaded to WebP. So you kind of let the software do its thing, and hope that it's the best solution.
That's great. I see another question here from Maggie. Thanks, Corey. Question:
You're welcome.
the unique OG photo with text on it size optimized for Facebook. Is that used in the body of the blog post, or do you give your SEO plugin the URL of an image in your media library?
Thank you. That's a great question. The second one. So this is a good point. I should add a screenshot. So if you're using Yoast, Rank, Math, most any of the SEO plugins, when you write your blog post up top, you put in a title, you put in your content, you set your featured image, usually in the sidebar off to the right. And then down below, there's a whole bunch of fields for SEO, right? You enter a meta description, and it doesn't appear anywhere on the page, but if you view the source, I showed you that screenshot earlier of those tags, right? That's where that meta description shows up. Most of these SEO plugins also have a place where you can select a dedicated Open Graph image. So if you are creating a separate Open Graph image and downloading it, that's where you will go. You'll click a little upload button, you'll go select it and upload to WordPress, and you'll set it. And it doesn't appear anywhere on your page. But again, if you look at those meta tags, if you view the source, yes, exactly as you said, it points to the URL of that uploaded image. If you use OMG, IMG, it does it all automatically for you. Plug.
Plug.
Great question.
Thank you for the question, Maggie. And then we have Dave asking, is there a CDN that you would recommend?
So for my clients, I use a service called Short Pixel. So that's one that I really like. There are a few others for WordPress that often combine with image compression. I never know how to pronounce it. EWWW, ew, like ew,
Yeah.
but I'm sure it stands for something. That's another one that I've seen folks use. If you search for WordPress image CDN, you'll get lots of options. Look for ones that have an actual WordPress plugin. It'll just make your life easier because most of the time it's set it and forget it. Essentially, it's upload an image and everything's just kind of taken care of for you. That's definitely the way to go.
Thank you. We have another question here from Margarita. Well, first she's saying thank you for having such a great speaker and useful webinar. Yeah.
Thank you.
What are good image sizes in bytes? Good image sizes.
Yeah, that's again, there's no perfect answer, and that's why I say I try to give sort of more broad rules. Again, depending on what theme you're using, or or what size page or screen you want to optimize for, your image size may vary. I generally won't let my clients upload an image that's more than 2,000 to 2,500 pixels wide.
Yeah.
To pick a number, right? And it really is me just picking a number. I'm mostly trying to protect my clients who are often not so tech savvy from uploading an image that is 20 megs. And so if they knock an image down to, to 2,000 pixels wide, it can only be so big. And then I also make them run it through something that will compress it. Again, usually just I always recommend compressjpeg.com or compresspng.com, but there's any number of tools out there. And so at that point I can be confident that there is some sensible file size that they're uploading, that it's not outrageous, and that when somebody is in a lesser urban area, and so internet speeds are real slow, and they're trying to view something on their phone, the phone is not trying to download a 20 meg image.
Yeah.
How's that for a nice
sense.
vague answer?
Thank you. Mona is asking if you could clarify again how I will add the OG/IMG coding to my WordPress website.
Oh,
Maybe you can go back to that slide.
Sure. So the easy answer is use a plugin. If we're talking about WordPress, use a plugin. Pretty much all of the SEO plugins will do this for you. And you fill out, again, when you're typing a blog, entering a blog post or adding a product into WooCommerce or whatever, there's a box down below where the visible content is, and it'll say Yoast, or it'll say Rank Math, or it'll say Squirrely, or whatever, and you fill in all that information, and that's how it gets populated. If you are a nerd like me and you decide to hand code things, then all of these tags go in the head of the code, of the source code of the pages that you're building.
Okay, that makes sense.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, I guess I don't see any other. Another one that just popped up real quick, since I know we're almost out of time. What is your plugin price, and what other details can you share? I guess your plugin price.
Thank you. Thank you for that's the person I planted in the back row, who I'm going to pretend that I don't know. So OMG IMG, currently $99. Again, we've got a discount code for you. There's also a lifetime deal. Everybody likes lifetime. But yeah, annual subscription for $99.
Okay.
Easy answer
That's
is to
fine.
go to OMG img.co, and you can check out the pricing there.
Great, thank you. That was funny about the plugin, the person in the back. That was fun. I didn't see any other open question here, and we're almost on top of the hour. I wanted to say to everyone who's looking at us, still viewing us, that to check out our webinars. We have them every month. They're going to be on greengeeks.com/webinars, and the next one is going to be October 16. It's a live content UX audit by Mary Osman from the Blogsmith. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. But I was going to ask you, Corey, if anybody has any question for you, where would they reach out to you? But you already shared your screen with all the information.
And I was going to say, I love
Okay,
answering
yeah.
questions. I love chatting with people. So yeah, by all means, get in touch. The @Corey Maass is on Twitter. I'm pretty active there. Happy to talk to anybody about just about anything. omgimg.co. And then I will also be at WordCamp US, wearing huge branded, ridiculous outfits. Hopefully you won't be able to miss me. But you can always message me and say, hey, where are you? Or just start going like this and I'll look for you. But yeah, so if you're going to be at WordCamp US, come find me.
We will. The two of us will, for
Awesome.
sure. We'll come see you, find you. Great. Thank you so much, Corey. Thank you for the presentation. It's been really great. And, you know, like I said, we are recording this, so we'll be sharing it with everyone. And thank you, Erica, for pasting all the links and replying to everyone in the chat room who was active in the chat room. And I guess we will see all each other next week in WordCamp US in
Thank you for having me.
Portland. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Anna. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.